Hey Lauren, how you doing?
Good, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing good. And for everybody out there who's joining us, welcome to an edition of Practical Pet Chats. Lauren, I know you and I have been friends for a long time,
Yes.
and we have decided to do this because we hear so often. I can only imagine what it's like on a regular basis when you guys talk. And we thought, wouldn't it be fun to share some of the many, many things we talk about? The only difference is we won't talk for 5 hours per episode. We'll try and keep it to manageable for everybody. But I think one of the things we should start off with is the notion of practical pet chats. Why did you and I think that was such a good concept and idea?
Well, for me, I have the group Practical Pet Feeding and Wellness. And when I put that group together, the reason I did, I had a store for 20 years, and I really started it off doing that group for clients so that they could access information when the store wasn't open, or you never need to get hold of somebody for an important question except in the middle of the night, or a weekend or a holiday or something like that, and I could at least get back to them. But the reason I went that route is because so many times us humans make things so much more complicated, especially when it comes to our pets. We think we have to run to the vet for everything. We don't know if something is, oh my gosh, do I need to worry about this? Do I need to be concerned? What is this that's happening? What is when my dog does this, what does this mean? My dog just ate this. Oh my God, is that okay? Those kinds of things. And it's like, okay, take a breath. It's going to be okay. Let's walk through this. And it evolved into being able to not only answer questions, but to go in depth into a lot of subjects and provide supporting documentation and the links and the information. So when it came to doing the practical pet chats, the whole idea is to demystify life with animals. It's just, it's not as complicated or dire 90% of the time as we think, as our gut goes to. And that happens because we're so emotionally tied to our animals and we love them so much. And the numbers of people that have stood in my store and said, I love my pets more than my kids. And it's like, no, you don't. And they're like, right now I do. But things like that, I understand how much love we have for our animals. And so many people are just quick to panic and go to worst case scenario. So that's
Sure.
the purpose of this, is to say, practically, here's what you can do. Are there dire situations? Yes. Are there
Yeah.
times you need a vet? Absolutely. But there's so many things that we talk about, you and I, and everything we talk about, even when we're talking for 5 hours, always has to do with animals.
Right.
So, there's so many things. And I know that I've had people overhear me and say, even my husband, who, we've been together 20 some years, he's like, I didn't know that.
Right. Right.
And
No,
I'm like, yeah,
learn, and that's really the other part of this is just learning, period. I learn every time I talk to you, and you learn about every seventh time you talk to me.
no,
So
that's not true.
being able to share these things, but also I think the practical side of it as well, that really, when we were talking about different ideas, is also everybody wants to go so extreme
Yeah,
because they hear like this is the only way, that's the only way. And it's like, are you at that extreme moment that you have to go that far? Because most often you don't stick to that. So let's
right.
talk about what you can do that is repeatable, that will make a difference not only today, but for the long term, and not stress you out so much that you pass that stress on to your pets.
Right.
Because the good things you're doing can quickly and easily be undone by the stress and energy you're now putting into all of it and then thrusting upon them.
Hmm.
So, negative, positive, it's all going to one place. And so I
Well,
like
and
the practicality of yeah, you know what? Can this fit in? Is this
Mhm.
something? And you and I are going to have a ton of conversations about so many different things.
Yes.
I love all of it. So my feeling is just there's also that it's okay. Like you said, when people, we all do it. I do it.
Hmm.
Something's wrong with my, dog. Something's wrong with, the bearded dragon, the tortoises, the jellyfish, etc. All the different things we have. We have a zoo here at my house.
Right.
It's just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And we're just saying, like, hey, bring it back a little bit
Hmm.
and it's going to be okay. We're
Hmm.
here. We've gone through this. So many people in the community, so many of you who are listening to this or watching it have gone through this. And we really wanted to, I love the community. I'm a part of your community. And we just wanted to be able to extend that a little bit further and say, hey, we're all here together. We're all trying our best. You don't have to go to the extremes to be a good pet parent.
Well, and teaching people too not to get stuck.
Yeah.
We get stuck in a routine or we get stuck in something habitual. And, just using my store as an example, I've been with animals from the time that pet parents have gotten them to the time that they've lost the pet, and then we have to go through that together, and potentially there's another pet. Um, but it's interesting. Well, I've always done it this way. I've been doing this for the last 5 years. Okay, let's take a look at how old your pet is now, and let's take a look at what's different because time goes by so fast and we're so busy that it's just so easy to just, this is what I do, this is what I always do, and it works. And then when it doesn't work anymore, because I know I'll say to people, maybe what we should do is change the diet. And they're like, no, 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 I've always fed this, right? But I think we should take a look at that because that's the easiest place to start for your particular issue. If we tweak this and change this, and also teaching people to not kitchen sink everything. Don't throw 30 things against the wall at one time to see what sticks. Let's do one thing at a time, see what works, and take it, through the whole process slowly. You'd be surprised how quickly the body can respond to the right thing.
Well, I think the other thing too that's so important that you just pointed out is let's do one thing at a time. One of the big things for me is let's do something. We know we need to do something,
Right.
and you can get overwhelmed real easy. Dr. Google and all the different groups and everything else, it's overwhelming.
Hmm.
Throw in AI and we're just,
Hmm.
a thousand different pathways. Now, I am someone who does believe in there are different ways to get to the final destination, but you got to start with that first step.
Right.
And so that's that other part that I'm hoping, we add to people's lives is take a first step, because what you've been doing has gotten you here, right, wrong, indifferent. You've identified you need to change something. It may be for a thousand different reasons. What's that first step?
Right.
And that's that practicality coming back into it. And
Right.
because too many people get overwhelmed, well, I can't do that. So I guess I can't make a change,
Hmm. Well,
you know?
besides being overwhelmed, they're in a hurry. And I'll just
Yeah,
use one of my dogs as an example. From the time I got her, she had issues with reflux. She's a 3-pound dog, fully grown. And she sees a holistic vet. And the vet was like, have you tried this? Have you tried? Yep, did that. Yep, yep, yep. I, I run the gamut. I know all the options. And she goes, well, structurally, this kid may just be, have a faulty valve or be built this
sure.
way. And I said, I've considered that too. I'm just looking to see if you had anything that maybe I haven't tried yet. And she's really cool. And we walked through and she goes, no, I think you've got a handle on it. I didn't give up. I tried things. I retried things that I had tried before. I give things about 30, 60 days or so to see what, if there's any effect. Um, but a year and a half later, she's better.
Uh,
And whether that is she outgrew it, She came into her own. It was a series of things. Whatever, you can't get frustrated and give up. You can't look for the quick answer. Sometimes it's not there.
Right.
Sometimes that conventional give her a pill and you'll see everything stop isn't the answer, because all you're doing is throwing a blanket on a smoldering fire, and underneath the fire is still going.
Right.
You're just not seeing it. So, I didn't want to do that. And it's just, being here for people to be able to offer some practical advice. And if they need to go to the vet, then, point it out. Yeah, this needs a vet. This
Yeah.
is one of those things that you're going to have to get some intervention professionally.
Right. Right. Well, and I think one of the things for me that has always been an ebb and flow, right? Is you have folks who are pro one way or the other. You
Hmm.
know, I'm pro kibble, I'm pro raw, I'm pro vet, I'm only this kind of vet, I'm pro vaccines, I'm no vaccines. And like the rest of the world, there's so many times where you have to shift based on your situation and your pet situation. And if you have a multi-pet household,
Right.
or a multi-member household, there are things that I would love to do for my current pets, but one member of the household would be at risk if we made that change. Well, then you got
Sure.
to pull back. That's the practicality of it. Is that there is no, here's the only way, here's the
Right.
absolute, here's the this, navigate that and make through. And yet at the same time, I think the other thing that I loved about what he said was you listened to what your vet said, but you didn't stop there. You kept, okay, I have a good, idea of what's going on. I've done what I can do. I'm going to consult the vet, and then I'm going to continue on that journey to try and get there. Whether we get there or not, I'm not throwing out everything, and as you said, throwing the sink at, the wall. I'm just going to know that I know my pet better than anybody else.
Right.
My kid is going to be there, and I've had the similar situation, but you said something that I want to just ask you about, which is how'd you get into all of this? Because I get asked that a lot. How'd you get into all this? So I'm going to start by asking you, Lorin, how did you get into the pet world and go from there to where you are now?
Well, I got into the pet industry because I opened up a pet store, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I had a retail background, but I didn't really know, this was during the time when pets were just crossing into that whole becoming a bigger, more important part of the family. For
Sure.
me personally, that had always been the case, but it was getting more widely. You could see the shift just beginning. Prior to that, I had always had animals since I can remember, and always loved them more than anything else on the planet. Um, and like everybody, didn't know anything, just knew I loved them, wanted to take care of them. And because of my lifestyle at the time, and I traveled a lot, I had a cat.
A cat.
A cat. So I do what I do
Okay.
because of a cat. Yes. I know everybody thinks it would be a dog that knows me. But I had cats, and I had one particular cat at this time who, oh my gosh, this poor cat. I would drive 2 hours to go to what I thought was the best place to take him. It was a cat clinic. And the vet was fabulous. I mean, he would meet me in the middle of the night. He was really great. But this poor cat, I was told very early on, don't expect this cat to live beyond the age of 10. And that's nothing, especially for cats. I was like, that's not long enough.
Right.
That can't happen. Yes, but he has a lot of issues, and he's allergic to himself, and he needs this drug and that drug. And I signed up for everything. I was, you know, I think I got a second part-time job to be able to afford all the veterinary bills. But he was on prednisone, was living on prednisone. I got a custom-made kitty inhaler for him, and he had albuterol, and after about 5 years, this was a fabulous cat. I looked at him, and all I saw was this fat little Macy's Day Parade balloon body and this tiny little head, and just these sores and everything all over his body from licking constantly. And I was feeding what I was told was the best food. And I looked at him and I was like, this something's not working. This isn't working. So this can't be how this kid lives his life. And so I started digging. And that's what has happened over the last few years is more and more people are digging. We have more availability of what to dig into, and how to get answers. It's also more convoluted. And
Right.
there's a lot of obfuscation because a lot of companies are involved now with making sure that, you see it their way. Um, but I didn't have a lot of that at the time. So, I was digging and digging. And the first thing I thought was, oh my God, this is not the food I should be feeding this kid. And I started by changing his food. And within 30 days, he was markedly improved. And so I went a little bit further and thought, okay, well, he doesn't seem to need his inhaler as much. So I just paid closer attention and learned to calm him down if I thought he was headed towards needing his inhaler. And after about 45 days, I started talking to his vet about his prednisone. And his vet said, oh, he's never going to get off of that. This was a great vet. This was a good person, who he was taught what he was taught in vet school, and that's what he ran with. And I just couldn't, I started digging into the drugs that he was on and thought, okay, so if I look at that, what do I need to do? Well, you need to wean him. So I thought, all right, I'm going to take the shot. And I started to wean him off of this. Within about, I want to say 4 months from my first foray into changing his diet, 4 months later, he was on no drugs, no
Wow.
meds, was on a completely different diet. His turn was so quick. You want to talk about guilt. But you don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And that changed the world for me. That kid lived to 23.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And I called his vet,
That's
who wasn't his vet because I moved, and
sure.
he didn't need a vet really at that from that point forward because I was, handling everything at home with him, and he really didn't need meds. So I called his vet about a year after he passed, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I haven't talked to you in so long." And I said, "I know." And he goes, "I'm retired, but I had a cell phone." And I said, "I know. I just wanted to follow up with you." And I said, Raisin passed, and he said, "Yeah, but we knew that he wasn't going to have a long life." And I said, "Doc, he passed a year ago." And he sort of didn't hear me. He was sort of still going on about, we did the best you could by him, and I know how much you loved him. And I said, "Doc, he passed a year ago." And he stopped and he goes, "No, we're not. I don't think we're talking about the same cat." I said, "Oh no, we're talking about the cat that screamed bloody murder when I would take him into the clinic. And y'all were so terrified that you thought he was going to shred you, that you were wearing the fire gloves, that were up to the
Oh yeah.
shoulders." And it took me probably the first 6 or 8 trips to the vet before I could tell them he's not going to bite you, and he never bit them. And but I don't blame them, because he sounded like people in the waiting room would say, "What is in there?" And I said, just a small cat. Um, but I said, "No, he just passed." And he goes, "That's not possible." And
Wow.
I said, "Yeah, he." past the 23. And they were like, I mean, he just couldn't believe it. And we had a long talk about it. And he said, yeah, he goes, I know that things have gone more towards that. He goes, I just wasn't trained in it and didn't have the time to take a look at any of that stuff. And he goes, we don't get a lot in vet school about nutrition. And
Sure.
he was the first vet that had ever said that to me openly. And I said, I so appreciate that. Um, and we've kept in touch. He's, sold his clinic and all that. But it was so nice to see a vet who'd done this for 40 some years who said, yeah, we don't know everything. There's so much more to know and there's so much more to dial in per animal. And I appreciate those people, those caregivers who understand there may be another way. And I encourage you to seek that out, and I'm here for you for what I can offer you, and no hard feelings. I realize that you may want to seek out something else. That changed my world. My husband, when I opened up my store, said that he didn't see anything but the top of my head for the first 5 years because I was so buried in trying to learn and read everything I could. And then there were started to be courses that I could take and classes I could take and
Sure.
universities that were offering classes in animal science that were geared more towards nutrition and things like that. So and more specifically trained people became available to learn from. And then you know at that point I realized that I had a cat and 12 dogs and had my own R&D department. So and that's how I got to where I'm at with a lot of education in the middle of all of that and a lot of, personal experience and a lot of helping other people with their animals. And then here we are. But yeah, people are oftentimes shocked to hear it was a cat that got me into this and not a dog.
So the cat's name was Raisin. Why?
Because it was a beautiful golden reddish gold Abyssinian. And he was the same color as a California golden raisin. So I named him Raisin.
I love that. But by the way, that would not have been something I would have gotten correct on the "How well do you know Lorin" exam. Uh, that's amazing. I love that. And what I really like about it too is that that's how so many of us find our pathway in the pet world is out of that passion, out of that love for an animal or many animals, and it just sucks you in, and
Yes.
uh, it carries you on the journey that you go on. Sometimes that journey's great, other times, twists and turns.
Like everything,
Yeah.
like everything. But but I catch myself every so often thinking, "Oh my God, I wasted so much time before I realized where my
Oh,
passion was." And then I think, "Okay, I didn't waste that time. It's part of what got me here to that
right.
journey." So, but it's like, "Oh, those years that I missed that I could have learned so much more and helped so many more animals and that sort of thing." What got you into it?
Oh, well, so similar story in that was around animals my entire life. And big animals, small animals, dogs, cats, birds, hamsters, you name it. So I've always had a wide diversity. But probably my soul dog, cover your ears, Bella, who's in here with me right now. But Sugar was my soul dog. And she was thrown out of a car at the Cabazon outlet. We heard her story. And as my wife likes to tell the story, I bought a house not because we got married, but because I wanted a dog. And when we
Seems
heard,
reasonable.
yeah, when we heard Sugar's story, we adopted her and they told us, hey, she probably has ongoing damage and all that, but she chose us. It was amazing. We were at an event. She crawled into my wife's lap after navigating through all these different folks. And I was like, that's our dog.
Yeah.
Um, but we got her home. She didn't respond. She was terrified, um, and so we actually thought she might be deaf. So back then, many years ago, there really was not a lot of information out there.
Right.
Uh, about deaf anything, animal related. So I was looking up little things I could find, and even back then, practical, right? Hey, just make up some signs that you're repetitive with. And I did that for 2 days. That's all I did was just to try and connect. And she just sat there, much like Bella's doing right now, looking up at me.
You
And
mean
much like,
sign language, right?
yeah, just always. So if you see me move my hands, it's because for the longest time I would communicate with my hands. But after 2.5 days, she finally let me in on the joke. She just was unsure of the environment, but thought I was really entertaining and answered to her name and all that. But unfortunately, her leg did give way, and we ended up, we would have taken her as a tripod. But we did run into someone, our vet knew someone who had a machine because she hadn't broken her growth plates. They crafted a titanium leg, and the idea was that the growth plates would grow over it. And then, she would be, for all intents and purposes, have all the uses of it. Um, so she was just such an amazing being. She was such a part of our family. We adopted a second dog, um, who, quite frankly, fooled me. The rescue had brought over a number of dogs. And I said, well, whichever one jumps into the pool. It was February. The water was like 52, 50 degrees type thing. And of course, the runt went and waddled over and fell into the pool. I jumped in, clothes and everything. And by the time I surfaced, because it was so cold, she was already back out of the water and laughing at me. Jumped back in, swam over, and I'm like, this is our dog. So that was Zoe. And we just that was the beginning of our family for my wife and I. And you really do learn a lot about yourselves when you're caring for any being. And what happened, I became the photographer in part because I had a very good friend who was doing a lot of photography with the props and all the rest of that. And we lost one of our dogs, one of our family dogs, not Sugar Zoe. And I was like, you know what I want to do? I just want to, have good heirloom pictures of pets that anybody would appreciate instead of the looking down, right? It was just as I
Right.
was going through the photos that I had, it just broke my heart. That's not how I wanted to remember those particular, that dog or any of the dogs in our family. And so we did that. And then that led to this whole like trajectory of, oh, you can take pictures with animals. You must know even more. And what it really was I became what I like to say I am today, a connector of information. I never hold myself out as an expert necessarily. I'm educated, I'm researched, I'm a connector because I'm connected to so many wonderful people. And one of the things in that process was I had connected with a number of the folks I knew in the industry and was looking for solutions. Zoe was diagnosed with cancer. Um, and so we'll save that story for a whole other day. But the long story short was you just dive deeper because, as you pointed out, you get that passion. And I love that you mentioned the guilt because I had that guilt of with all the people I know, I've got to do better. And so that carried me through. And I've done, the radio thing, the TV thing, the podcasting thing, the
The book
writing,
thing.
author, all the book things, all these wonderful things. It's truly been a blessing and something I'm very proud of in my life. And I've really watched the industry, like you probably feel, kind of grow up and come out. I remember when I would say I'm a pet parent, it was controversial.
Oh my gosh. It was
People
like you
wanted me,
said something so incredibly
yeah.
rude.
Oh my, I feel sorry for your kids. Don't. They're treated amazing. And that's all of my kids, including my four-legged and
Hmm.
two-legged and three-legged. However, if they're in
Right.
my household, I love them and I'm responsible for them. That's the commitment I make
Yeah.
when I bring you into my house. And so but it is funny how back then that was so controversial. I actually put Sugar in a baby carrier because she couldn't walk after she had her surgery. And I remember, and I'm in the business world as well. And I remember going to an appointment and I had her on my chest and I'm wearing a suit. And someone stopped me at the door. It's like, whoa, you can't come in like that. And I'm like, well, A, I let you know my dog just had surgery. And if I can't, that's okay. I'm happy to reschedule. But this dog cannot put any pressure. So I am carrying her for the next 2 weeks, 24/7. Oh, And so that's that. Back then, oh my God, you're a crazy, pet guy. Today, people would go, oh wow, you know, look at that. The dog looks like it, has, a cast on it, must have gotten hurt, wonder what happened, etc. Um, Different attitudes. So there's
Completely.
a lot of things I do love about where we've come in the pet world, and I feel blessed to have experienced so many different parts of it. Um, did step away for a little bit, because that passion, as we've seen in so many areas of, it doesn't matter if it's human life, animal life, plant life, passion is not enough. And passion can be misdirected as well. And
Sure.
so it's another reason I wanted to share these conversations with that you and I have with the world of, hey, you're not strange, you're not, overly passionate, might be a little judgmental occasionally, but we all are. So let's
Yeah.
get past that and let's get back to helping each other. Because I firmly believe, and this is my number one, solve all the problems of the world. We release a box of puppies into a room, and anybody who cannot find love and positive energy there, we might have to, take a second look at, because you bring an animal into a room and it just opens up that childlike fascination that we all had before the world had gotten into our system, if you will, where it's just, oh, what is that? Oh my gosh. And you just open up the receptacles to learn, to receive all of these different things that sadly, as we get older, I think a lot of us lose that. And we start to go, well, there is only one. Well, that's maybe because it's the most practical way for you, or the best way that you think you're achieving something.
But it's not the
You
only way.
are maybe, yeah, it's not the only one. And sadly, I think if there was a part of the pet world that I wish I could go back and sprinkle that on as I was growing within it, it's that. It's that, extremes one way or the other. Hey, it's got to be this way, or why do you even, do these things?
Right.
Uh, okay, so
Well, I did
know
that. I
that.
experienced that, in my store where, I had dug in so much, and then nutrition to me was so fascinating. And then I got on the bandwagon of this is the only way. This is the
Right.
best way, and it's the only way. And why isn't everybody doing this? And that's passion and exuberance taking over, not the practicality of this may not work for everybody.
Well,
Let's
and
be
I think
real.
in fairness too, if we go back to those times, um, we were all hungry for information, and
Right,
it wasn't like it is today.
right.
And so and there's no shame in any of that. You and I know some of the biggest names in the industry, period.
Yes,
And if you go back and look at what they were saying or writing or giving speeches about, that's changed today
and many
versus,
of them say that.
yeah. Oh no, exactly. That's one of the biggest reasons I respect so many of them,
Right,
and I appreciate when they'll say, this is where we were because that's the information we had. That's the research we had. Getting any kind of official research was difficult back in those
right.
days. Now we've got amazing research studies going on because we also know the whole synergistic, and I'm a big synergistic guy, and the whole holistic side of things where everything impacts. And yet that was fringe back then.
Yeah,
And we only talked about that at the integrative vet conferences
right.
because it was like any other place. Oh, I remember having so many issues with so many people that were in the traditional side of, and I look now and, it's not about, oh, you were wrong, or it's, oh, I was right. I'm just glad we've gotten here.
Right.
And I'm excited to see where we go.
I think a
Uh,
lot of people forget too that what makes science what it is that nothing is absolute.
right.
I mean, you could do all the research papers you want, but that research is on that group. It's not indicative when you're dealing with living creatures. It's not indicative of all of that same group.
Right.
I mean, we've seen research papers done with 12 golden retrievers, and I won't go into which one that is,
Right.
but 12 golden retrievers, and all of a sudden that's law of how
Right.
this works for all these creatures. And it's like, no,
Right.
and that's just that group. And there's so many controls and there's so many manipulations and there's so much, all of that stuff has to be taken with a grain of salt. This is why, I mean, this is a whole theory behind the practical verbiage usage, which is what is practical, generally speaking, can be adapted to that specific creature for that specific creature by the parent creature if they so choose. It isn't an absolute.
Right.
People would come into my store and say, do you have dog toothpaste? And I'm like, do you have coconut oil at home?
Right. Right.
And they'd be like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, antiviral, antibacterial, they like taste better, no, nothing added to it. You could use that. It's really easy to use. Pennies on the dollar, no artificial ingredients, stuff like that. And people would be like, oh, and they would almost be like, and I can I help you find something else? Well, I'm looking for something to buy because I don't want to just leave. I mean, I've had people actually say, and I would laugh and say, just come back the next time you need something.
Right.
We're here to help you. It's okay. Well,
Right.
I didn't buy anything. I came in to buy toothpaste. And I'm like, yeah, but you got coconut oil at home. It worked great.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, but I think that's also too, those that know you, people like myself who drove an hour plus to shop at your store. That's
what is
why.
what is wrong with you?
Well, I know. I may have
So
passed
many
one.
stores. Yeah.
Yeah, I may have passed one or two other places on the way out there. But there was only one Lorin. And I do think that's the other
Thank God.
thing to acknowledge in this as well, is one of the other reasons I wanted to do this, and you and I have had this discussion for a few years now, is after the pandemic, the Lorens of the world are fewer and far between in the stores.
Yeah.
And that, that loss of the knowledge base, that loss of the people who were diving deep like you were, not just the owners, but I know you trained your staff and you would have them learn a lot. I remember one of the companies I was involved with, we flew around all these different independent stores and it was wonderful. I mean, to see the questions, to get to meet the people, and they were just sponges for this type of
Mhm.
information. This is great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yet, I know coming out of the pandemic, those folks, unfortunately, for the most part, are no longer at those stores, if even in the industry at all anymore. And that's another sad part of just the evolution of things. You're not even at the store now. So when I drive an hour, I have to drive an hour back. And I definitely don't stop off for dog toothpaste. I got plenty of coconut oil.
I
But
turned that store over though. I turned that store over to good hands when I sold it.
great
And
hand. Yeah, no,
yeah,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
they're doing a good job. But you're right. I mean, it's a disappointing thing to walk in and the thing that you love most should be that the focus of that store, right? I mean, that's what
yeah,
they're about. And instead, what they're trying to do is make a sale.
yeah,
And they're not even asking questions to make the sale. They're just trying
yeah,
to sell you something. Do you need any treats? Any toy? It's not like, what kind of dog do you have? How old is your dog? Do you have pictures? Do you have,
right.
or what brings you in today could be, oh, I need food. Oh, what have you been feeding? It's not even that. It's
Right.
let me take you over to what, is our focus this month or, our hot seller and it's like, gosh, you haven't asked me anything about my kid.
And I think that's an important point that you're making is when you go to many of the stores, it's almost like you have to show up knowing what you're looking for,
Yes.
as opposed to, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Here's who I'm looking for it for. And here's my concerns that I'm trying to address. It's when you find a store like that and people who care like that, that's a great find. As much as any product that you're going to find, people that know, care, ask, and dive deeper, that means a lot to me. As a pet parent, I want, much like I want my vet, etc., to be an extension of our family.
Hmm.
The pet store, it's tough. It's tough. And I
It's
only
just,
have the insights you have, but yeah,
but how do you recommend anything without knowing who the creature is, or knowing anything about them? You can't make a recommendation. I mean, we did a lot with not just nutrition, but with supplements and that sort of thing. And I would post something in the group, and then somebody would come in the store the next day, and I'd catch him at the counter checking out with, a staff person or standing in line, and I'd be like, "Hey, hang on a minute, what are we doing?" And
right,
they'd be, arms are like this. They got, all these products, and I'm like, "Holy cow, what is going on?" Well, I saw in the thread that you posted, blah blah, and it's like, "Oh, okay, no, let's not buy all this stuff. If you got an issue, let's deal with that issue, and we'll deal with it one thing at a time, and before we move on to something else, and we'll give it enough time." But there's so much focus on how much, what size of a how much the ticket's going to be before the
right,
the client leaves the store. And it's like, what difference does it make? I don't care how much the ticket is. What I care about is, am I creating a client that I'm going to have over and over and over again?
right,
Because if we're going to compete based on products, it comes down to price. If we're going to compete based on the fact that we actually give a damn about you and your animals, and so we're going to be that trustworthy person that you can reach out to, and we're going to tell you the truth. I mean, a good example is, and this was not this is not popular, but I didn't allow employee feeding programs in my stores. It's like, if we're going to sample things and stuff like that, that's fine. We're going to do that, but you can't spiff or incentivize my employees, because first of all, they're paid well, and secondly, I don't want them to be recommending based on that, based on a goal. I want them to actually dial in for the animal in question specifically on what the animal's needs are. Everything in the store is equal otherwise. And we practiced that for the full almost 20 years that we were in business, because it really came down to every animal was unique. So it's disappointing, when I moved out here, um, my idea of a good time is to go around to pet stores. And even when I owned a store, it was everywhere we went on a quote unquote day off, which never really existed. I wanted to see other pet stores, and not because of anything other than I love the environment. I wanted to see how cool their place was, what it was
right.
like, and what neat ideas they had, and, what they were offering and how they merchandised it. And I respect and admire the industry and the people who have the passion in it. It wasn't a let me see what I can copy or anything, because we did our thing, we did our thing the way we did it. Um, and so when I moved here, I was super excited to have that same experience, and super disappointed
Right. And
because
we should point
I
out
couldn't find it.
where you live, right?
Huh?
I said we should point out where you live because not everybody has your home address. So what state do you live in now?
I
And
live
what
in
state?
Texas. I live in Texas now. And I'm not making a blanket statement about I haven't been to every store in Texas. I'm just talking about in my area. But I can promise you that anywhere that I would go, and Texas is a big state and I have a lot to see, I'm going to be looking for pet stores, because that's
Right.
where I want to be. That's what I want to see and hang out in. And I don't have a store now. But I will say that, on the coasts, they seem to have a different mindset about um, nutrition and what they're focused on. And maybe it's because there's such a propensity for that. If you just look at California, which I don't have a lot of good to say about, so I'll just put that out there. They are pretty knowledgeable when it comes to food and nutrition. A lot of stores know, a significant amount as compared to other places. And, it isn't to say that there's, I'm not bashing any stores for making money. We made
Yeah,
a killing. We did really well, but we did well because we didn't focus on the money.
right,
We focused on the care of the animal and the customer, and then the money just came because they knew we really cared. They knew it was legit. So when they wanted to buy something, they came to us to ask, is this what I should get? And we would tell them truthfully, no, that's not gonna, what are you trying to do? No, this is not gonna work for that.
yeah,
Instead of, yeah, you could give it a try. It's not, I don't care about that.
right.
We were in it for the long haul and the retention of the customers' loyalty and trust.
Right. But you also know how unique your store was and how unfortunately unique what you all did and what you have. And I know you've shared this with other stores and, in different, whether you've been consulting or whether you're speaking at different events, you've made it clear that, yeah, it wasn't about the profit. It was about doing good, which then led to that profit. But more importantly, it was just a cycle of we're doing the right thing. And when you're doing the right thing,
Right.
that just has such a positive snowball effect. And I think it's also too, I'd also point out when I went to the store, and I hate to call them employees because it was like your family, your store family. You felt that
Yeah.
like everybody was family, everybody was trying, on a we care level. And again, unique. But it's not that hard to get to that either, though. And I know, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole different day.
Yeah. It does
But
take effort. It does take, an emphasis, not trying to minimize it, but from the standpoint is, um, again, getting back to that practical thing. If you just think how you want to be treated and treat these other folks that way, that's just the easiest foundation and starting point to get there.
well, and
And
my attitude was if it didn't work, I'm not meant to do this.
yeah,
If this wasn't accepted, if this isn't successful, then this isn't for me. This isn't because I couldn't just focus, on, what the sales were for the day. I mean, yes, that's important. You need to continue to operate and that kind of thing.
yeah,
But I firmly believe that if you did it for the right reasons, it would happen. Now, and to go back to something you said, I was unique at the timing
yes, yes, yes,
because we were early and there were not a lot of people that were going down the path that we were on. But that changed. And so there was a great deal more passion and a great deal more people across the country that were, also doing their deep dives and getting into doing the same thing the same way. Let's talk about the creature. And I sit back and I know who they are as stores, and I revel a little bit in their success because they too are doing it for the right reasons, with the right mentality, with all the care, and they're succeeding
right,
phenomenally. And you look at stores that don't do well, or you look at stores that, um, have to declare bankruptcy, and there's also a lot of factors involved. But I look at that and I think you missed it. You missed the opportunity. You missed the mark. There was a critical piece there that would have changed the world, and you didn't incorporate that into the mix.
right. Yeah, at the end of the day, and that's one of the things I think I've learned, and I'll just close out my part of the episode with I think that's probably one of the other sadness areas that I have in my travels through the pet space and why I got deeper into it was I had something that media wise didn't go the direction I thought it was going because it got the rights to it got sold to a company that just didn't want anything to do with it. And when the next opportunity came up and they asked me, what do you want to do? I said, what kills me is that in my travels throughout the pet space, I come across so many wonderful difference making products and people who are so passionate. But by the time I can get back into the mode of sharing it with the folks, that were fans of the Photographer and Pet World Insider, all those different things, it was sometimes too late. And it
Right.
just really, that was the genesis of Pet World Insider, because I just wanted to get, you know, gosh, you wouldn't know about this if you weren't in the pet world. And that's a shame.
Yeah.
And I still think there is a fair amount of that, not as much as there was back then. I think, that's a positive of the media and what we do and all the rest of this these days. But I do think also we've kind of swung the opposite way, where it was really hard to find that stuff, to now
Right.
it's almost overwhelming what's coming at you, on a constant basis. I have my own feelings about the social media platforms and whatnot, which I'll say for 75 episodes down the road. But I will say it's a mixed bag, and getting back to these conversations, hopefully we can shed some light on how to look at it, how to make your own judgment. Because I think for me, at the end of the day, that's what I'm hoping to help everybody with, is feel good about making your own judgment. You know yourself, you know your pet, you know your environment the best. Make the decision based on that, and not all the
But,
hype and not everything
but,
else flying at you.
but keep learning.
Always, always. I love it. Hey, Lorin, thank you so much. This has been a great episode. I really appreciate that. I want to make sure also, though, that people know where they can reach out to us with
Yes.
questions, with thoughts. And let me just save Lauren and I a lot of reading of emails. I get it. It should be Lauren 99% of the time,
No.
me a half a percent, Bell the other half percent. But you can reach out to us at practicalpetchat@gmail.com. So practicalpetchat@gmail.com, and find us on your favorite platform, subscribe, all the rest of that. We've got a lot of wonderful things that we plan on doing over the next year, and beyond that, hopefully. But yeah, thank you, Lauren. This has been great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks, Rob.